When I come around, got the whole thing wobbin'.
Going in, we got the NFC North preview. Every time we get together, we do a new division. Last time we did the NFC South. Please feel free to like and check out that video as well too, and give us any sort of feedback as well. And please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel while you're here. Give us any sort of questions, comments. Check out the Twitter handle. If there's questions, we know we cannot come up with all the questions and topics. Let us know if you want us to cover something else, and we'll be more than happy to do it for you. But now, the NFC North. Now, granted, this is an early preview. This is all after the draft. This is before preseason, and certain notable injuries happen. And all the free agents have now been signed. All the players have been drafted. And this is early. We will touch on this maybe one other time during the preseason or before the season starts to give it a quick rundown. But as of right now, this is what we'll do. And let's do it from worst to first. Last time we did we did from best to worst. Now we'll go to the number 4 team. I'll start things off, and this is a surprise. I have the Detroit Lions being the worst team in this division at 6-10.
Wow.
My reason behind this is their biggest addition to the team is LeGarrette Blount. Now, LeGarrette Blount has had great seasons. He won back-to-back Super Bowls with 2 different teams, with the Patriots and then with the
2-time Super Bowl champion there.
And with the Eagles. But my main thing is that's their biggest piece. It's him. It's LeGarrette Blount, a guy who's going to be your complimentary back to Amir Abdul. It's not a good... it's another weapon, yes, and maybe help you run, but still, they didn't add anything else. Now, granted, they didn't lose anybody else. They didn't have a big notable loss. They kept Ezekiel Ansah. I believe they franchise tagged him. He did have a down year, but I believe he's willing to bounce back. He's a very raw, athletic pass rusher. And they needed to have kept him, because if they lost him, I may have put in this team. I think he would have at least counted for 1 loss for the team. But, y'all know you may say, oh, well, Matt Stafford's on the team. To me, Matt Stafford, can throw for 4,000, 5,000 yards. All he wants. That defense has not really improved. They had Darius Slay, and he burst onto the scene relatively, I believe, 2 years ago. This year was relatively a down season for him. But, he's still one of the better corners in the league, relatively unhurt as well, even though his name, Big Play Slay, sometimes he does get snagged on. But at the same time, that defense has not improved really that much to me. Neither has that offense. They still don't have a bona fide, they do, I still believe, have Golden Tate on the team. But other than that, their weapons aren't that well. And Matthew Stafford, even though since Calvin Johnson has left, has technically looked better because he doesn't force the ball anymore to him. But I just don't believe they've added enough to compete in this division, and especially the other teams have gotten better, like significantly better compared to the Detroit Lions. Now, who's your number 4 team?
My number 4 team is the Chicago Bears. I have them coming in at 6 wins, 10 losses. I just think that Trubisky, he's just not going to cut it for me next year, I don't think.
You think he'll have a sophomore slump? Or he won't necessarily progress to the 3rd pick overall, I believe, or the 2nd pick he was?
I can't see him living up to expectations as of now. I think that since they got a little bit more film on him, they're really just going to key in on this dude, and they're just going to tee off on him. I really don't see the Bears getting far next year, so they're just going to have to wait a few years till maybe they can build a rapport and get a little bit better overall. But for me right now, they're the worst team in the NFC North, in my opinion.
Yeah, but great. I would have to say, though, because 3 and 4 are relatively close to me, and then 2 and 1 are just above the rest easily. I think, though, you can almost flip-flop those teams to being the winners, and you're going to hear why. Chicago Bears, to me, are my number 3 team, and I have them at 8-8. I'm a bit more optimistic than you. I think 8-8, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do have a losing season. Okay. But they have added so many pieces to their young quarterback. They're essentially giving him no excuses to be bad this season. Mm-hmm. with Allen Robinson signing him from the Jacksonville Jaguars. They finally get their number one because Kevin White, who they drafted a while back ago, has not produced to the level they thought he once was going to be.
At all.
They get a slot receiver in Taylor Gabriel. Adding small pieces like that to their repertoire. It may not be the big name signing, as people may think, but still a slot receiver, a relatively competent slot receiver. Then they had a guy, Aaron Lynch from San Francisco, who's somewhat been underrated at San Francisco. Has put up good numbers there, but now he will be the piece. Donnell McFree was a good signing at the time when they signed him, but he has not sacked the quarterback more than 4 times each time he was there in Chicago, and they had to cut him and let him go. He was a good player, I believe, with the Baltimore Ravens. They signed him big money, and he just couldn't, and now they replaced him with Aaron Lynch. Biggest loss is nobody, really. They didn't lose anybody at all. They added more than they have lost. If they lost guys, it's not really notable free agent guys. Impact rookies for me on the team is James Daniels, offensive guard, offensive center, 6'4" guy who's extremely athletic, can play arguably all 5 positions on that offensive line, and you need to help protect your quarterback. Anthony Miller, wide receiver out of Memphis, one of my favorite players coming into the draft. A guy who I said, if you like Calvin Ridley out of Alabama, then there's no reason for you to criticize or hate a guy like Anthony Miller. He can do almost exactly what he does. He just played at Memphis. He didn't play at Alabama. He didn't play at a big-name school. Mm-hmm. And Raekwon Smith, their number 1 pick. And their first-round pick, the linebacker out of Georgia. You know how it is in Chicago. They love their linebackers. They've always hit on linebackers and running backs. They've always been good at that. Raekwon Smith is in the next line of being great linebackers there, I believe. And they surrounded him with a good front 7. As you can see, they have Aaron Lynch, Leonard Floyd, another Georgia guy they drafted high up. They have Akeem Hicks. They got their Eddie Goldman, and then a guy. They also drafted another defensive lineman. I forget his name, that they also got up there. I believe went to the University of Florida. They have a great front 7, and I believe that they can go after the other teams out here. They don't really have much of a good offensive line, the rest of the teams in this, and I believe they can get after him. But the most important player is Mitch Trubisky, his year 2 development. He needs to, make that leap into a good quarterback to play to the level of where he was drafted at. And their wide receiver core needs to also perform well, but that usually goes hand in hand. And like I said, they have an upgraded front 7 to help that team out as well. Now, what's your number 2 team?
My number...
Or number 3 team, my bad.
Yeah. My number 3 team would have to be the Detroit Lions. I have them coming in at 8-10. It's
8-8.
8-8. I'm sorry, my bad.
That's all right.
I have them coming in at 8-8. It's not so much really like the Lions' fault that they're only 3rd on my list. It's just the fact that, the Packers and the Vikings are in their same division.
They're just on a whole nother level. Those 2 teams, I believe, they're just a really, great teams to be on. They're just very well stacked.
You have, arguably the best player in football on one of those teams, and then you have a very balanced, very stacked team, up-and-coming team that's in the same division as them. And then you got Matthew Stafford. He's a good quarterback, can give you 5,000 yards any season, but, the defense just doesn't help him out enough, He
and
doesn't have enough weapons.
The case. That's always been the case since he's been at Detroit. It's just kind of like where he can put up all these godly numbers and throw ridiculous stats year in and year out. And it's just like, the defense, it's just like Aaron Rodgers outscored him. And now Kirk Cousins into the division can outscore him,
Yep, so it's I feel pretty bad for Matt Stafford. I think he's a good quarterback, but he just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. So yeah. I'm giving him number 3 in the division.
Right. Number 2, mine is the Green Bay Packers at 11-5. And you obviously down year last year, Aaron Rodgers went down to injury. He came back last year for a couple games because they had a chance to go to the playoffs, but ended up missing it. But this year comes back fully healthy, and he has a new toy to play with, and that's Jimmy Graham, one of the top 3 best tight ends in the league right now. They also have added Muhammad Wilkerson to that defensive front, next to, a guy like Mike Daniels they have up there. That's a good addition to their front 7. Biggest loss is Jordy Nelson, Aaron Rodgers' go-to guy, time to time. But the Packers, they always know how to get receivers, it seems like. They've always gotten guys like, Donald Driver, Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson. Randall Cobb, believe it or not, out of that 4 guys I just named, was the one that was drafted the highest compared to all those guys. And all those guys have put up ridiculous stats, there at Green Bay. Have all had over 1,000-yard seasons, have all had at least a double-digit touchdown season. Now you had a guy like Jimmy Graham to the mix. Aaron Rodgers didn't really have much tight end help. At the best, he had, they had the other Rodgers they had there for a bit, but now they have, Jimmy Graham, a bona fide guy. Another loss, they had Morgan Burnett, a safety, one of their better safeties to complement Clinton Dix. They need to find a replacement to him. Their most important player right now is Aaron Rodgers, hands down. We saw the big, the drop-off from him to Brent Hundley. Brent Hundley was out there. I thought he would have at least stepped up to prove himself that, hey, like one of those backup quarterbacks that can prove himself that I can ball too. I can, maybe a team should trade for me. No team is trading for you anytime soon. Brent Hundley, I hate to say it, but it was a big drop off. You go from arguably the best quarterback in the game to, a guy who's just a competent backup, it seems like. Impact rookies on this team, Jazeer Alexander and Josh Jackson, 2 corners that are really going to help out this team a lot. They also drafted really well. They brought back Tramon Williams back to the team, a guy who also played really well that Super Bowl run, if you don't remember.
I remember
him, and he did really well there. And they add to, and you can never have enough DBs, Mm-hmm. There's 6 to 7 receivers on a team, and DBs are very versatile. You can play a corner, slot corner, outside, safety, strong and free. It doesn't hurt to have enough pass rush and enough cornerbacks. But I want to hear what your number 2 team is.
My number 2 team is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. I have them coming in at 11-5. I know they just probably got better with Kirk Cousins coming in, because I definitely think he's a better quarterback than Case Keenum. And, they got the running back who just had a pretty good year till he got hurt, Dalvin
Cook. Yep.
Dalvin Cook's going to be better next year. I know the Vikings are coming, but, I'll get to it when I get to my number 1 pick.
Go ahead.
We obviously know who it is.
Yeah, go ahead. And I'd said what my Green Bay Packers are at the Green Bay Packers are at number 2. What do you think at number 1? What do you tell me about the Green Bay Packers?
Number 1, it's got to be Green Bay. Whenever you got a guy with this type of talent, with this type of skill, with this type of heart, Aaron Rodgers, I can never pick against him. Aaron Rodgers just can single-handedly take over games. We've seen him do it by himself. This guy gets Hail Marys. There's nothing this guy can't do. I can't pick the Minnesota Vikings over Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers, time and time again, when he goes against the Minnesota Vikings, I've seen him just completely shred them.
Yeah.
So I just cannot pick against him single-handedly because of Aaron Rodgers. That's why I'm putting the Packers number 1.
Right. And respectively so. And my number 1 team is the Minnesota Vikings at 13-3. Their biggest addition is Kirk Cousins and Sheldon Richardson. 2 bona fide great guys, especially Kirk Cousins. Impact rookies. Mike Hughes, Holton Hill, and Jalen Holmes. These are guys that the Minnesota Viking fan base is going to get to know in the future. Their head coach, always loves to draft corners. When he was out there in Cincinnati, he was always drafting corners first in the first round, and he always puts his rookie corners though on an island, and he always tests them how much they can handle the pressure. And when you face Aaron Rodgers, and Matthew Stafford, you're going to face him in 4 games, a year, every year. He's going to put them out there, but the Minnesota Vikings has a deadly front 4 right now. You have, Everson Griffin, who we have rated on our top pass rusher list.
Yep.
Then you have Linval Joseph, a great run-stopping defensive tackle. You have, now Sheldon Richardson added to the mix as well there too, and Donnell Hunter, who's also an up-and-coming pass rusher there as well. The reason why I have them so highly rated is they have a defense that can relatively try to shut down Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. They have a lot depth at defensive back. They have speed and athleticism at linebacker. They can rush the passer and all that stuff. And then Kirk Cousins last year, the Minnesota Vikings last year went 13-3 with a least talented quarterback. Now, granted, Aaron Rodgers was hurt. And, and a lot of these other teams, Chicago Bears was in a transitioning year as well, too. But with a least talented quarterback, they went 13-3. Now they added a Pro Bowl level and a proven 4,000-yard passer to their team. They should win the division. I think that's like their goal this year is to win the division. They have to me, and they have to make a serious playoff push. Last year, I feel like was relatively a fluke year because Aaron Rodgers was hurt. You had the moment Aaron Rodgers went down, it should have been the Lions to win, to be quite honest. But the Minnesota Vikings stepped up. Their playmakers made all the good plays. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, and all of them. Not to mention
the miracle they had against the Saints at the end of that game.
Right. And then you saw how it all caught up to them against the Eagles. They got blown out of the stadium.
The true colors came out. They just got destroyed.
Yeah. And then it's just like, and you obviously saw the better team won. That game wasn't a fluke. It was just like, that was to show that the Minnesota Vikings kind of relied on a bit of luck in the sense that Case Keenum outperformed way more than he should have. And also the fact that, Aaron Rodgers went down. The division was wide open for anybody. And also the fact that, they got, the missed tackle of Marcus Williams at the end of a game, won them a game.
The Saints definitely would have played a better NFC Championship.
I would have believed so, that there would have been a more competitive. I still probably think the Eagles would have won ultimately. But it was just, you just handed, essentially the win to the Eagles by playing so poorly on all stages of the game, all 3 levels, whether it be offense, defense, and special teams. It was just horrible for the Vikings. Leaves them in a bad taste in their mouth, but at the same time, it's like it's rare that you go 13-3 and you improve at quarterback,
Mm-hmm. They had the number 1 defense last year too.
And they retained all their guys and added Sheldon Richardson and more young cornerbacks to the team. It just, all you're doing is, and that's the reason why I have them such highly touted up there. But that's it for our NFC North preview, and that's it for today's podcast. Please feel free to leave a like, share it on all medias, Facebook, Twitter, and everything. That would be greatly appreciated. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, so that way you know when we post any sort of content up here. And we'll talk to you guys next.